watching the It's Her Time podcast with Cody and Jess. Hi, welcome back to the It's Her Time podcast. My name is Cody Sanders, and I'm a holistic health practitioner and functional nutritionist. And girls, I'm so excited. Can you believe that this is actually our 200th episode? Thank you so much for being such loyal listeners and for tuning in every single week. I love having these kinds of conversations. And today's conversation is going to be even more fun than usual because it's something I think is so fascinating. Today, we're going to talk about, do hormones affect our brain health? So what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about your hormones? If you're like most people, it's probably your period or just reproduction. But did you know that hormones have a significant impact on your brain? Sex hormones like estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone are involved with brain development even before birth and play a big role in our memory and our mood and overall cognition function or cognitive function throughout our life. So in this episode, I'm excited because we're going to talk about what we know about hormones and the female brain and how they influence brain health and what happens when these hormones fall out of balance. But before we dive in, let's join Jess for a Mixhers Girl Say.
Some of you may have seen that recently Mixhers actually launched some new apparel. And it has been so fun to see the movement behind Mixhers having our very own sweatshirts. This sweatshirt that we launched recently, the statement that we made on them is woman is a verb. And on our social media, we asked, what does that mean to women that are seeing that statement? And so today for Mixhers Girl Say, we're actually going to talk about what our followers on social media, what that means to them.
I love it. I can't wait to hear this.
What does woman is a verb mean to you?
To me, we're women in action. Yes. Being a woman, is that what I'm supposed to say?
Women, well, that's what you're supposed to say.
I'm all ding, ding, correct. You passed. Straight A's, star on your forehead. Yeah, it's just that women are in action. And that's what we're trying to do, is help women be able to do what they're meant to do in this world. And so that's what Mixhers is all about, is supporting women to be able to be their best so they can go do their best. And so bam, I guess I passed that test. Good.
Yeah, you pass all the tests,
Oh,
Cody.
I don't know.
Always. Okay, so women submitted. Woman is a verb. What does that mean to you? One woman wrote, we are doers. Yeah. Another woman wrote, woman is female and is powerful.
I love that.
We love the word powerful. Mm-hmm. Women are very powerful. Another woman wrote, the I am me.
Yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that can mean so many things. Mm-hmm. I love that. That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And another one I loved is that someone wrote that it's touching them as they think about motherhood. Mm. And I actually felt like that hit close to home for me because woman is a verb. It's obviously like in motion, doing something. I think as women, we're very, very, very constantly thinking about the people around us. How do we best support them? Where do we need to show up for our kids? How do we need to answer to these people that have these needs? And we're constantly in action trying to help those around us. So woman is a verb also to me has a deep meaning of we're in action trying to help those around us.
Yeah.
Also, I always hope, and I know Cody hopes this as well, we hope that you're in action trying to also always help yourself. Mm-hmm. Take care of yourself. Remember that you're worth taking some self-care, slowing down, recharging, resting, fueling yourself well. And so while you're out doing great things for others, remember to also take great care of yourself. So our apparel is online right now if you want to check it out. But anyway, thank you for chatting about woman is a verb and what that means to you. And now we can get into the episode. Mixhers is a company made for women by women. Each of our products have been carefully and lovingly crafted to support you in all stages of your life, providing you with the optimal health you deserve. Each ingredient we handpick is 100% all natural, backed by science, and chosen specifically to better your life physically, mentally, and hormonally. Each product empowers your body to take charge of its monthly hormonal shift and flows, empowering you to live life to the fullest. Let Mixhers take care of your needs from sunup to sundown, and you take care of the rest. Check us out at mixhers.com, Mixhers.
Okay, let's begin by talking about what are the differences between male and female brains. People often joke about the stereotypical differences between a woman and a man's brain, but science suggests that there is at least some truth that there are some differences that differences exist. So starting in utero, before we're even born, sex hormones influence brain development. And studies have found significant biological differences between the appearance of male and female brains. By the 8th week after conception, androgen hormone levels are much higher for male fetuses, which is making scientists think that is what shapes early differences between the two sexes, especially with the right versus left hemisphere development. Also, I think it's super interesting that research also suggests that females with a male twin get more exposure to these androgens, leading to differences in their brains compared to non-twins. Studies also show that men on average have larger brain volume and more white matter, which facilitates communication between the various parts of your brain, while women have more gray matter, where most of the brain processing is done. It's very important to note that while average differences between men and women as groups exist, this doesn't mean that every single male brain has higher volume or white matter than every single female brain. We're all individuals, and our biological sex isn't the only factor in our brain development. So now white matter, it decreases as we age, and especially if we have things like dementia. Studies also show that women are more likely to be diagnosed with dementia, including Alzheimer's disease. This is probably because women live longer and have less white matter to begin with, but it also appears that estrogen has a significant role in protecting a woman's brain against dementia. And the big drop associated with menopause plays a big role in developing dementia as well. So I'll go into the brain protective role of estrogen in more detail in just a minute, but it's worth noting that research suggests that older men have higher estrogen levels than postmenopausal women because testosterone can be converted into estrogen. Now, compared to a woman who has gone through menopause, men don't experience the same rapid drop in hormones as they age. This gives us a glimpse into why exposure to sex hormones is so crucial for a healthy brain. So now let's ask ourselves, can hormone imbalances affect the brain? That's what this whole episode is about. Yes, hormone imbalances can cause all sorts of unwanted symptoms and conditions, things like acne to infertility and all the things we talk about all the time. But alterations in hormone balance can also impact the brain. Again, there's some more research out there that shows that hormones influence cognitive function and our emotions. Sex hormones are also neuroprotective, meaning that they protect nerve cells against damage associated with neurodegenerative diseases. A significant alteration or a drop in hormones like we see during menopause can cause brain changes that influence mood and cognition. Now, can hormone imbalances cause neurological symptoms? This is good news. It's not showing that hormone imbalances cause neurological symptoms, aside from like more severe endocrine disorders. But still, there is a link between neurological conditions like Parkinson's disease and exposure to sex hormones over time, where more exposure to estrogen can actually protect against these diseases. Now, we're all familiar with cortisol, our stress, hormone. That's what we commonly refer to, even though there are also other hormones and neurotransmitters such as adrenaline that are also involved in our stress responses. But cortisol is absolutely vital for our energy and for our metabolism and for staying awake during the day. Just ask anyone with HPA dysregulation, commonly referred to as adrenal fatigue, like we talked about a few weeks ago, and they'll tell you that having issues with cortisol can majorly affect their daily life and their energy levels. And on the other hand, high chronic stress levels are really bad for our brain as well. And research suggests that the resulting high cortisol levels may be a big reason why this is. Now, your brain is filled with glucocorticoid steroid receptors that bind to this cortisol, which is likely why high stress levels can cause the brain to atrophy, and it can cause the brain to decrease in weight. And it can also reduce our ability to be resilient to future stressors, and it can affect cognition and memory negatively. Now, women and men can both be affected in these ways by stress and cortisol, but brain imaging studies suggest that women may have a longer lasting stress response and their cortisol levels could remain higher for longer than men's in similar situations. This is why I am always talking about how important it is to implement stress reducing practices like exercise and mindfulness and journaling and meditation and why they are so important. So let's talk about which female hormones actually affect the brain. Let's talk about the whys also behind this. Now, sex hormone fluctuations throughout your life, including puberty and pregnancy and menopause, all of these times affect your brain. These hormones can influence brain structure, cellular health, and signaling and DNA transcription, or what is known as the writing of DNA code into RNA molecules that's necessary for life. Now we're going to dive into how estrogen affects our brain and how progesterone affects our brain and how testosterone affects our brain. But let's start with estrogen. Estrogen, as you girls know, is a primary sex hormone and it's involved in our sexual and reproductive health. It's actually what gives us our breasts and our hips, and it prepares our body for ovulation. And the role of estrogen on the brain is super fascinating, primarily for its role in our ability to have good memory and to protect us against neurodegenerative diseases and cognitive decline. Now, your brain is actually full of estrogen receptors that act like these little docks for this hormone to land on. When estrogen attaches to the receptors, it starts a cascade of cellular changes that impact cognitive functions. Now, estrogen plays a primary role in brain regions responsible for memory, like I just mentioned. Estrogen impacts how you learn and how well you remember through all the influences on genes and the hippocampus, which is the area of the brain that's responsible for learning and for memory. Now, there are so many studies that are also out there that point toward estrogen's role on brain health later in life, suggesting that prolonged exposure to estrogen starting in puberty improves cognitive status with age. Now, there are 3 types of estrogen, and each one is associated with different phases of life. But estradiol, which dominates the years while we are menstruating, is most important for the brain. One study found that women who had their periods for longer were less likely to experience severe multiple sclerosis, which is a disease that impacts the brain as well as the spinal cord. And there's another study that showed as estrogen levels increase before ovulation, the hippocampus also grows. It also has a lot of estrogen receptors in there as well. But as we just talked about, once estrogen levels drop dramatically with menopause, the risk of degenerative brain conditions increases. Now, let's talk about estrogen hormone replacement therapy, because I know you girls are all wondering about this. Because why aren't we giving all women extra estrogen after menopause? Hormone replacement versions of estrogen are mixed with regard to neuroprotection. Some studies have found that it could support brain health if timed right, but it appears that exposure to naturally occurring estrogen, primarily estradiol, is still the best form of brain protection. Still, many experts advocate for some estrogen therapy in order to minimize brain-related risks. While the brain is indeed important, we also need to keep in mind that estrogen is also linked to certain cancers like breast cancer. So a risk versus benefit assessment has to be done for each of us individually. Now, can lack of estrogen cause brain fog? Because I know that's a super common symptom that many of us have been dealing with. Yes, the drop in estrogen is the primary culprit behind brain fog and forgetfulness during menopause. A study on women in midlife found that those with lower estradiol levels performed worse on memory tests and had different brain activity, especially in the hippocampus. While you can't always influence hormone levels after menopause, there are ways to help with brain fog. One study found that physical activity improves cognitive function after the age of 50. Brain fog can also be a sign of low thyroid hormone. So it shouldn't be ignored or just dismissed as an age related issue. Now, estrogen actually has an effect on the male brain too, and I wanted to talk about that as well. It could be protective later in life, although there is more research that's needed. But as I mentioned before, elderly men may have more estrogen than postmenopausal females, which may protect them against higher rates of dementia. One study also found that giving men estrogen later in their life improved memory for both men and for women. Now let's talk about progesterone and its effects on the brain. Like estrogen, progesterone protects nerve cells and supports healthy blood flow to the brain. Now, progesterone is a sex hormone that plays a crucial role in pregnancy and in regulating our cycle. But interestingly, it's also made by our brain cells. So how does low progesterone affect our brains? Now, within the brain, there are also receptors for progesterone, which influences our mood and cognitive function. It's also neuroprotective and used to treat traumatic brain injuries or TBI and strokes, as it can regenerate and recover cells in the brain and within the nervous system. Now, progesterone supports mitochondrial function in the brain cells. Estrogen can also do this. Mitochondria are those little tiny structures that regulate all the energy production in the cell. And mitochondrial dysfunction or impairment is linked to age-related diseases. Now, progesterone also supports improvements in cognitive function, mood, and stress response. It also has very powerful anti-inflammatory activity, which could protect against cognitive disorders. Some research points towards progesterone's role in memory, but the results are mixed with studies pointing towards benefits that are dependent on the time of administration. Now, progestins. Progestins are the synthetic versions of progesterone, and they're found in birth control. And they don't appear to have the same benefits as naturally produced progesterone from the ovaries. One study found that women given estrogen and progestin actually had higher risk of dementia than estrogen only or a placebo. These results point toward issues with progestins, but more research is definitely needed on this as well. Does progesterone affect mood? Alteration in progesterone can affect mood and concentration because of a metabolite called allopregnanolone. This binds to receptors for the calming neurotransmitter GABA, promoting a sense of calm and relaxation. But when progesterone drops too low, GABA levels can also decrease. And this increases feelings of things like anxiety and also insomnia. On the other hand, too much progesterone, which is rare outside of hormone replacement therapy, is associated with depression. Now, progestins, not progesterone primarily, when taken as a hormonal contraceptive, is also linked with depression. Now, let's go into testosterone, okay, and how it affects the brain. Testosterone is typically considered a male hormone, but it's essential for everyone. It helps support sexual desire and our bone density and affects both male and female brains. Low levels are linked to a risk of Alzheimer's and other degenerative diseases, primarily in men. Older women with low testosterone don't appear to have the same decreases in cognitive performance as men, but more studies are needed as testosterone is understudied in women. Testosterone could support brain health, but studies on the influence of testosterone on the brain are mixed. One study, though, did find that giving testosterone with estrogen to postmenopausal women made their verbal memory worse, but giving testosterone without estrogen improved their verbal memory, according to some of the research. Again, so much more research is needed. But let's talk about, can testosterone cause brain damage? Because that's something that has also been considered. According to a Yale study, taking high levels of supplemental testosterone can negatively impact the brain by increasing cell death. But that's not the case with naturally occurring testosterone. So is testosterone good for mental health? Interestingly, both high and low testosterone increases the risk of depression in women. And entering menopause with higher than average testosterone levels also increases the risk of depression. So hormone balance is key for mental health. So how then do we support our brain health? I'm going to give you guys some tips that can be implemented right away, and they have such beneficial attributes to us and our brain health. So the first one is exercise. Regular physical activity increases oxygen and supports the body in delivering the nutrients we need to our brain. Also, strength training and walking and aerobic exercise as part of our daily routine can really support our brain health. The other thing that's really great for our brains is to play brain games. So things like Sudoku and using like the Luminosity app, crosswords, and other brain stimulating activities can really help to train our brains and keep them sharp. The other thing to consider is you want to make sure, if you're not already, eating enough of that cold water fish that are so high in omega-3 fatty acids, because that's where you find a lot of those nutrients is in cold water fish. And it's been shown to be highly effective in various neurological conditions. It readily crosses the blood-brain barrier and has shown promise in the treatment of Alzheimer's disease. Also, omega-3s are anti-inflammatory, which offers the brain protection against inflammation, since inflammation can be a major issue for brain health. So if you struggle with eating fish 2 to 3 times a week, you may want to consider using a supplement. Now, when using an omega-3 supplement, make sure it is filtered to remove any heavy metals and that it comes from a reputable source. The other big one that is so important for us to make sure that we're paying attention to is to keep our blood sugar in check. Now, blood sugar regulation is essential for hormone and brain health. Imbalances in blood sugar can lead to a whole host of hormone issues, including elevated testosterone and cortisol, and then low progesterone. So there is a big link between our hormones and our brain. And I wanted to just share and go over quickly, because I know this is a lot of information, some of the key takeaways from today's episode. First of all, male and female brains are different. And these changes start before birth, partly because of the differences in our sex hormones. Estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone play important roles in our brain health, including our mood and our memory and our overall cognitive function. Estrogen especially appears to have a neuroprotective effect on our brain. And keeping our hormones balanced naturally throughout our lifetime appears most beneficial for our brain health. This is why we suggest supporting optimal hormone production during every age and phase of your life. We offer Her Time Daily and Her Time Extra Strength to support optimal progesterone production and estrogen and testosterone balance. And we also offer Her Thrive that is filled with neuroprotective phytoestrogens that can support you through menopause and beyond and provide estrogen-like benefits by attaching to the beta part of your estrogen receptors. So the goal here is to support our own body's natural ability and function by providing the building blocks necessary to function optimally as we age. And that leads to healthy, balanced hormones. I love learning about all of this stuff. I think it's so fascinating, and I hope you found it fascinating too. If so, you girls know what to do. Please share this episode with the girls in your life, because sharing is caring. I want to thank you for tuning in and being such a great support to this podcast and to this community. I love that we have done 200 episodes, and we're going to just keep going and having so much fun. And we hope this podcast continues to grow. We adore you, and we can't wait to join together again in another fun conversation next Tuesday. Every Tuesday, we have a new episode with guests and with more deep dives like this. Until then, have a very happy and healthy week. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.